Imagine having $400 million and not being able to touch a single cent of it. Somewhere, on a tiny hard drive locked in a desk drawer, sits one of the biggest Bitcoin fortunes ever mined. The man who owns it. He's already used 8 of his 10 password attempts, and the clock is ticking. One wrong move, and the fortune is gone forever. 2 tries left. What would you do in his place? Yes, gamble, or walk away from the money of a lifetime? Stephen Thomas had always been a meticulous man, the kind who labeled his jars of coffee beans with roast dates and organized his computer files into nested folders. But in 2011, that attention to detail had one fatal blind spot at the time. Bitcoin was still a fringe curiosity. Programmers whispered about it in online forums. Libertarians praised it as money without borders. And hackers mined it on home laptops while sipping cold coffee in dark rooms. Stephen, a software developer from San Francisco, wasn't especially interested in cryptocurrency as a revolution. For him, it was more of a technical puzzle, a system elegant enough to admire. So, when a fellow coder offered him 7,002 Bitcoins as payment for making an animated explicable video about the technology, Stephen didn't see gold. He saw, well, digital poker chips. At the time, they were worth about $2 each. A fun novelty, nothing more. He stored them on an IronKey, a small silver USB drive, known for its impenetrable encryption. It was a gadget built for spies, journalists in war zones, and anyone with secrets too valuable to fall into the wrong hands. With an IronKey, you had 10 tries to enter your password. Fail 10 times, and the device would self-destruct permanently, erasing all the data inside. No backups, no second chances. For years, the IronKey sat untouched in his desk drawer, collecting dust next to expired warranty cards and old SIM cards. Life moved on. Stephen took on new projects, moved apartments, and barely thought about Bitcoin. The price bobbed up and down in the background. $30, $200, $1,000. Interesting, but not life-changing. Then came December 2020. One evening, while scrolling through the news, Stephen froze. Bitcoin had just crossed $30,000 per coin. He did some quick math. 7,002 Bitcoins, multiplied by 30,000. Over $200 million. By January 2021, that figure had swelled to nearly $400 million. He sprinted to the drawer, yanked out the IronKey, and plugged it into his laptop. The screen asked for a password. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. And then the cold realization. He had forgotten it. Not entirely. He remembered fragments, half-formed sequences from years ago. A mix of capital letters, special symbols, maybe a date. But the exact combination? Gone. He tried one guess. Denied. Another. Denied. 8 tries left. He closed the laptop. His palms were sweating. This wasn't a regular login. Each failed attempt brought him closer to the digital guillotine. At 10 wrong passwords, the IronKey would vaporize his fortune in milliseconds, like a locked vault sinking into the ocean. He paced around the apartment. $400 million was a number so large, it didn't even feel real. It was enough to buy private. Islands, skyscrapers, entire sports teams. But right now, it was as useless as a stack of Monopoly money sitting behind bulletproof glass. In desperation, he tried to reconstruct his mindset from 2011. What was he into back then? Which books, movies, or ideas might have inspired the password? He scribbled combinations on scraps of paper, names of old pets, lines from songs, obscure programming terms. Each one felt like a shot in the dark. After 4 more tries, the IronKey screen told him the number he dreaded. Only 4 attempts remaining. He closed his laptop again. His hands were trembling now. He couldn't afford to be reckless. The next guess might cost him tens of millions per keystroke. And there was no one to call, no helpline, no password reset button. Just a man, a tiny metal drive, and the knowledge that the greatest payday of his life was locked inside a box that wanted to eat itself. The iron key went back into the drawer. This time, when Stefan closed it, the sound echoed in his head like the slam of a bank vault. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrifying question formed. What if I never open it again? For 3 days, the iron key sat on Stefan's kitchen counter like a live grenade. He tiptoed around it, making coffee with exaggerated care, as if a clatter of mugs could jostle the password loose from the back of his skull. He knew better than to guess again without a plan. So he treated the problem like a forensic case. First, timeline reconstruction. He opened old email archives, dug through 2011 forum posts, even restored a creaky MacBook from a decade-old Time Machine backup. He scrolled past messages in broken English from early Bitcoin pioneers, IRC logs laced with in-jokes about cypherpunks, and a calendar entry from June that reads simply, "Iron Key Setup." That single line felt like a thread. He tugged. He found a text file called password_ideas.txt, cruelly, frustratingly empty except for one line. Use something you won't forget. Idiot, he laughed despite himself, and then didn't, because the irony stung. Next, headspace reconstruction. What else was going on that week? His photos offered clues, grainy snapshots of a rooftop with friends, a close-up of a paperback, snow crash, dog-eared at a page about private currencies. A playlist labeled 2011_deep work featured glitchy electronica and one random Sinatra track, "Fly Me to the Moon." He wrote all of it down. Titles, phrases, mashups, anything that could have influenced a memorable password. He turned to habits. In 2011, Stefan had a system. Every high-value password followed a pattern, 2 words smashed together, an inside joke number, and a punctuation mark that felt right. He couldn't remember the words, but he remembered the feel. That was something. He built a generator to spit out permutations based on his 2011 world. Snow crash, metaverse, Satoshi, cipher, rooftop, Neapolitan, fly me to the moon, mixed with a short list of numbers, birthdays, apartment numbers, favorite prime. He ran the script and watched 1,000 candidates bloom into 10,000. None of it mattered unless he could test without burning attempts. He couldn't brute force the iron key. That was suicide. But he could simulate his own memory. He cloned the generator logic into a local password manager and piped those candidates into encrypted dummy vaults with the same hashing algorithm the iron key likely used. If a candidate matched the memory of how he built passwords back then, word length, entropy, composition, the dummy vault would decrypt. Not proof, but probability. He worked until midnight, slept fitfully, then worked again. On the second evening, 3 candidates bubbled up as high likelihood based on pattern scoring and the time window around his iron key setup calendar entry. All 3 shared a strangely specific suffix tied to a joke he'd once made about the first block. Reward having. He wrote the 3 on a sticky note and stared at them. 8 attempts left. 3 good guesses. Before he tried any, he called someone he trusted. Maya, a colleague who had once spent 6 months helping a hospital recover from a ransomware lockout. She knew the psychology of passwords better than anyone he'd met. "Walk me through your ritual," she said. "No hello, just triage. Not the password. You, the room, the time of day, the mood." Stefan closed his eyes. Warm night, window open. "I'd just finished the video cut. Proud, tired. I remember wanting to be clever. Not obvious clever. Me clever. Then, your best guess is the one you're slightly embarrassed by, Maya said gently. The one you'd roll your eyes at now. Test that feeling in your generator. He added a new feature, a cringe score based on his current taste versus his 2011 taste. It elevated one candidate above the others, a Sinatra mashup with a cypherpunk twist, and yes, that having joke number at the end. It felt wrong. And right at the same time, he plugged in the iron key. The prompt appeared. His hands trembled. He typed slowly, like diffusing a bomb. Enter. Denied. 7 attempts left. He pushed back from the desk, heart pounding. He walked a lap around his apartment, hands on his head, talking to himself. Okay, good. We're still alive. He forced himself to stop. This process wasn't luck. It was a search. The second candidate was more on the nose. A Neil. Stevenson reference welded to a number only his old apartment mailboxes would have suggested. He typed, enter, denied. 6 attempts left. He stood at the sink and ran cold water over his wrists until the panic receded. The room smelled like coffee and hot circuitry. He checked the clock. Don't chase. Not tonight. He closed the laptop, unplugged the iron key, and slid it back into the drawer. He texted Maya. 2 down. 6 left. I need a better map of 2011 May. Her reply came fast. You're circling it. You need one more anchor. Something you touched. Every day that week, he looked around. Then it hit him, the notebook. A battered Moleskine he had carried everywhere in 2011, now boxed in a closet. He dug through moving crates until he found it. Brittle elastic band snapping as he opened to a page covered in sketches. Hash diagrams, doodles of keys, and there. List of words arranged like a ladder. The bottom 2 were crossed out. The top circled twice. He didn't try that night. He scanned, indexed, fed the words into the generator, and watched the candidates reshape. The cringe score shifted. A different top pick emerged, one he never would have guessed without the notebook. He slept for the first time in days. Morning. Coffee. Deep breath. He plugged in the iron key and typed the new candidate, each character a bead on a rosary. Enter. The wheel spun. Denied. 5 attempts left. He didn't curse. He didn't move. He watched the rejected password settle in his mind, not as failure, but as feedback. There was a pattern here. He could feel it off by a shade, a rhythm, a symbol. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was remembering with tools. Texted Maya. Closer, she replied, and slow down. Don't die at the 1-yard line. He closed his eyes and said the circled word from the notebook out loud. It tasted right, but his fingers paused over where to put the symbol. In 2011, he had. This habit sticking punctuation in the middle, not the end, because it felt harder to brute force. He opened his generator, made the adjustment, and watched a new candidate appear clean, dumb. Exactly the sort of clever he would now mock. He didn't type it. Not yet. He wrote it on a card and taped it to his monitor with a Post-it over the middle character, a bright yellow blindfold across the solution. Then he set a timer for 24 hours. One more pass through the past. One more night to let the shape of it settle. 5 attempts left. 1 life-changing keystroke. Stefan woke up with that card still taped to his monitor, the Post-it covering its heart like a secret he wasn't yet ready to face. The apartment was cold. The coffee machine hissed in the kitchen. He ignored it. Today, the iron key either came 1 step closer to opening, or it would punish him for impatience. But first, context. He pulled the Moleskine back onto the desk. The circled word was still there, smudged at the edges from time and oil. On the opposite page, in much smaller handwriting, were arrows. They connected to a doodle of a keyboard, pointing not to letters, but to the number row, and in between 2 digits, a star drawn in black ink. That wasn't random. In 2011, Stefan had been obsessed with keyboard patterns as passwords. Diagonals, shapes, symbols that mapped the physical movement. Rather than pure logic. It meant one thing. The post-it on the card wasn't hiding just any symbol. It was hiding the keystone dot. Before touching the iron key, he tried to reconstruct the motion of his fingers when he made passwords back then. He sat with his eyes closed and imagined typing on his old mechanical keyboard, the heavy one with blue switches, and a spacebar that stuck slightly to the left. The sound, the resistance, the way his right hand always hovered too high before dropping to a symbol key. He realized something. If he'd been in performance mode, typing fast while feeling smug about being clever, he wouldn't have ended. The password with the symbol. He would have buried it inside, exactly 2 characters after the start, breaking the rhythm just enough to make sense to himself alone. Maya called. No greeting again. You ready? She asked. Almost. I think I've mapped it. You think, she repeated. You need to know. The next one you try has to feel like déjà vu in your fingers. He nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Then I'm spending the morning in muscle memory drills. You're a lunatic, she said, but her voice was smiling. For 3 hours, he typed candidate passwords from the generator into a dead text file, paying attention not to accuracy, but to flow. Some felt clumsy. Others were smooth, but too forgettable. Then halfway down the list, his fingers landed on one that made him stop. It wasn't just smooth. It carried the same pause after the second character that he'd just imagined earlier. His hands remembered the weight of it. His brain had been chasing the word, but his muscles had already known it. That was the one. He ate lunch standing up, unable to sit. The iron key was back on the desk, cable coiled like a sleeping snake. He unwrapped it, plugged it in, and waited for the prompt to appear. He typed slowly, not because he doubted, but because each keystroke felt final. Letter, symbol, letters, number. The cadence was perfect. He hit enter. The wheel spun. Slower than last time. Longer. For a moment, Stefan swore the screen flickered, like it was deciding. Then, denied. 4 attempts left. This time, Stefan didn't feel the panic rise. Instead, there was something else. Certainty. This attempt had been closer than the others, not by chance, but because the pattern was almost right. The iron key hadn't unlocked, but it had hesitated. That meant the checksum process had taken longer, an indicator, in his mind, that the entropy was on. Target. He jotted down everything about the attempt position of the symbol, choice of word, the exact number. The winning combination was in there, buried like a fossil, waiting for the right brush stroke. He called Maya again. You're circling the bullseye, she said. What's your next anchor? Stefan's eyes drifted to the pile of 2011 relics on his table. One item he hadn't touched yet, his old DSLR. He'd used it constantly that year. He popped the memory card into a reader. Inside, hundreds of photos. But near the iron key setup date, there was one shot of his desk with the password scribbled on a napkin in the background, half covered by a coffee cup. Only 2 characters were visible, but they were exactly where the symbols should be. Stefan leaned back in his chair and exhaled. The missing piece wasn't a word. It was where the break happened in the flow. 4 attempts left. And for the first time, he knew which one would work. Stefan didn't plug the iron key in immediately. Not yet. Instead, he zoomed in on the photo from his old DSLR until the pixels blurred into digital noise. The napkin in the shot was creased, coffee-stained, and the handwriting was his tight and slanted, the way he wrote when thinking fast. 2 characters were visible, a capital letter and the symbol he'd been chasing for weeks. That was the spine of the password. Everything else would wrap around it. The problem was that the Iron Key's countdown wasn't a psychological trick, it was cold math. 4 attempts left meant 4 lives. Every guess was a bullet loaded in reverse. Pull the trigger too many times, and the vault destroyed itself forever. So he did what he'd promised Maya. No rushing. He built a map. At the center, the napkin photo. Around it, sticky notes with possible prefixes and suffixes, pulled from his old writing, gaming handles, email usernames, and the weird nonsense phrases he used to name Wi-Fi networks. Each candidate was measured against that invisible fingerprint. In his hands, the slow he'd rediscovered yesterday. At 3:14 p.m., Stefan called Maya. "I think I've got it." "You think or you know?" she asked, echoing her line from yesterday. "I 90% know. That last 10% is how vaults die," she said. "Talk me through it." He explained. The symbol came early. The capital letter before it was the napkin. Clue, the suffix matched a phrase he'd been using in late 2011 on gaming forums. Maya was silent for a long moment. "That's solid. If you've got the rhythm right, it should sing when you type it." He turned off all distractions. Phone face down, blinds half closed. Even the fridge's hum felt too loud. The Iron Key clicked into the USB port with a sound that felt heavier than it should. A prompt appeared. Stefan took a deep breath and typed, not looking at the screen, but at his own hands. The keystrokes landed like notes in a song he hadn't played in over a decade. He hit enter. The loading wheel spun. Slower, slower still. Then, access granted. For a second, Stefan couldn't move. It had taken weeks of digging, 4 lives to spare, and more memory archaeology than he thought possible, but the vault was open. Inside were folders named with timestamps, from 2011 to 2013. Some were harmless old freelance invoices, half-written scripts, holiday photos. But one folder stood out. /Caesar/. He clicked. Hundreds of encrypted files, peered, plus a single text document that wasn't locked. Its name, "Read Me First." He opened it. Inside, only 3 words. "It's still here." Stefan's skin prickled. This wasn't just a stash of old work or forgotten crypto keys. This was something ongoing, something someone had expected him to reopen one day. He called Maya, voice low. "It's not over," he said. "Good," she replied. "Then we're not done." The words glared back at him. "It's still here." Stefan's pulse pounded in his ears. This wasn't just a message to him. It was a statement, a warning, maybe even a countdown. He scrolled to check the file's metadata. Last modified, 14 days ago. That made no sense. The Iron Key hadn't been plugged into any device for nearly 10 years, which meant someone else had accessed it. Recently. He dove into the Caesar folder. Every file name was a jumble of characters. Some looked like Latin, others like strings of base 64 code. But when he sorted them by date, a strange pattern emerged. 6 files had been updated on the same day as the text file. He opened the first one. Instead of scrambled nonsense, it contained a GPS coordinate. Another file had a date and time. Third, a single name he didn't recognize. The remaining 3 files were heavier kilobytes instead of bytes, and locked with a second layer of encryption. The kind that didn't just need a password, but a key file. And the only place that file could be stored was inside one of the coordinates given. Maya's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "You're quiet. What did you find?" He told her about the metadata, the coordinates, the timestamps. She didn't waste time being shocked. "And this isn't a dead vault," she said. "It's an active drop." "Meaning?" "Meaning. Someone's still using this device to pass information. And you've just walked into the middle of it." That night, Stefan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the possibilities. Was this espionage? Corporate sabotage? A personal setup? He'd been a journalist once, chasing leaks and scandals. Had he tripped over a story he'd abandoned, or had the story found him again? By morning, he'd decided. He booked a flight to the nearest coordinate. It wasn't glamorous, just a shipping yard on the outskirts of Rotterdam. But if someone had been here 2 weeks ago, maybe they'd be back. The air at the docks was sharp with diesel and salt. Stefan walked slowly, pretending to check his phone, scanning for any sign of a key file drop. Then he saw it wedged into the crack of a rusted cargo container, a tiny USB stick sealed in a weatherproof capsule. He hesitated, heart thudding. If this was part of Caesar, taking it might alert whoever was running the operation. But if he left it, the truth stayed locked away. He took it. Back in his hotel room, he slotted the USB into his laptop. The machine hesitated then, without prompting, the iron key launched a new folder. Access. Inside were the 3 encrypted files, now unlocked. The first was a ledger of Bitcoin transactions millions of dollars worth. The second was a list of offshore companies linked to political names he knew all too well. The third was a scanned contract, signed, dated, and stamped an agreement that, if real, could topple governments. Maya's call came before he could even process it. "You found it, didn't you?" she said. "Yeah," Stefan whispered. "And it's not just still here. It's growing." She paused. "Then you need to decide, do we blow it open, or do we vanish with it?" The cursor blinked on the screen. Over documents worth more than the Bitcoin ever could be. Stefan stared at it, knowing that whatever choice he made next wouldn't just change his life. It might rewrite history. Sometimes the real treasure isn't the money, it's the truth buried with it. But truth has a price. If it were you, would you cash in, or blow the secret wide open?